Hey guys, welcome to the stream, and if you're on YouTube, welcome to the YouTube video. I'm gonna wait for a few of you guys to get in here before I really start with this. Hey Japheth, how you doing? Hopefully I said that correctly. Let's see. Hey DMA, how you doing? I'm just gonna wait for a few more to get in here, and then we'll be off to the races. So basically, well, I'll get into this in a moment. I'm gonna wait for a few more minutes just for people coming in. I had a bit of an ordeal getting this working, so hopefully we won't run into any problems. I don't think we will, but on the off chance that we do, well, we'll get to that if it happens. Alright, it looks like we've got plenty of people in here now. Got a few familiar faces and some new people in here as well. How you guys doing? Alright, so let me show you guys what we're going to be looking at today. I've already gone ahead and done a few of the preliminary things, but let me show you these particular dependencies. So the main one that we're going to be looking at is this one, the Flutter player, the YouTube player Flutter library. This guy, he's got two libraries. One of them's just called YouTube Player, and then the other one's called YouTube Player Flutter. YouTube Player apparently only works on Android, and so because I know that a lot of you guys also work on iOS, I figured that we'd go with this one that also is supposed to work on both Android and iOS. And of course, because we need to interface with the YouTube API, we're going to use this library, the YouTube API library, and mainly we're doing this so that we don't actually have to build all of that logic ourselves. So we just have to put in our API key, which I've already put in, but I've got hidden from you guys, and then and we can use this particular library to go and fetch data from the YouTube API. Looks like we've still got some people filtering in, excuse me. Alright, so got these two libraries. These will be primary libraries for this project. What I'm thinking of doing is building some kind of just basic YouTube app. Like I want to be able to fetch YouTube videos based on a query. So you put in a text box, go get a list of YouTube videos, click on a tile, pops up the video player, you can play the video, and then if you want to, you can go into full screen as well. So something like that. I guess we could add comments and things like that, but really not going to worry about that right now, because I think this should be enough for this particular video. Alright, so already I've got a few things going on here, just basic app here, but I've got the imports right here, and I've also got a separate file for my API key, just to keep it out of view. If you guys want to see the actual dependencies, these are the current versions that I'm using for the player and for the API. And yeah, so I guess we'll get started here. So I guess first we want to make sure all of this works. So, or we kind of want to see how it works because I've never really used these libraries before. So what I'm going to do here is turn this into a stateless widget, or a stateful widget rather. And I'm going to essentially just erect a YouTube video player, I think that's what it's called, and then just play a video. So I'll grab one of my videos and I'll do it that way. Alright, so let's see. I guess basically we just want to put a YouTube. The auto-completion's not working. That's a pain in the butt. There is this bug, and I'm not sure if it's still around with the current version or not, that the what's it called? The analyzer doesn't actually pick up the auto-completions of third-party libraries. It may have been fixed by this version of Flutter, which is 1.6.3, but the version before, 1.6.2, and versions before that had the broken issue. Alright, so YouTube player, let's see. So we need to put in the video ID, it looks like, and the context. So context is just the build context. And I'm going to get a video ID from one of my videos. Let me do that real quick. Let's see, I'll just grab one of my Elixir videos. This should work. I mean, I really don't know. So let's build this thing, see what it looks like, and I'll throw up the emulator. Is it Philly? Thanks for being up late in Sweden, Fred. It's kind of cool that you're building a big Flutter app. And got a few other names that I can't pronounce, unfortunately. Sorry, guys. But hey, everyone. All right, so let's wait for this to build. It'll take a few seconds because it's never built before. So while this is building, I'm just gonna let you guys know that the stream could potentially crash, and if that happens, well, if the stream just stops suddenly, wait a few minutes and I'll get it back up. So I had an issue where Windows was giving me a blue screen of death as a result of hypervisor, and basically I think I fixed it, but I had to like go all the way up to the insider release of Windows to get this to work. Alright, let's see. So it looks like it's doing something. Oh, there we go. So we got my video thumbnail. Let's see if I can play it. Alright, so we've got controls on there. And there's my beautiful voice. Let me give you guys some desktop audio so you can hear it too. So yes, the video is playing even though it's buffering, so I guess a little laggy on this device currently. Probably because I'm streaming too. Anyway, I'll stop that now. So this works perfect. This is exactly what I thought it would be. Looks like we've got built-in controls so we can seek to further into the video. Seems like that's a little broken though, but it does seek further into the video, which is fine. There's this full screen, which I'm kind of worried about pushing, but might as well do it. Alright, so this actually puts us in a portrait mode. And I think I flipped it the wrong way, but whatever. Let's see if it still plays in portrait mode. Looks like it's having trouble. Let me check and see. There's some kind of exception that was thrown. There's really nothing I can do about that. And it looks like it does in fact work, but we're not getting any video. Alright, so we'll have to worry about that as we're building our app, I guess. Alright, let me flip it back, turn this off. As much as I like hearing my own voice, I don't really want to hear it right now. Alright, and I'll mute the desktop audio while I'm at it. You're thinking I should embed this stream into the Android app? Yeah, that would be interesting, though I'm not really sure how to actually get the streaming video, or whether or not that would actually work on this particular plugin. Hector, I appreciate that. Is it Gima Francis? Thank you as well. Alright, hopefully I didn't butcher your name, by the way. Alright, so we got this working, we know it works, that's good. So let's start to build some of this logic then. I'm gonna just close out the emulator for now, so because we're really not gonna worry about it. And yes. Alright, so essentially what I'm thinking is that rather than worry about or relying on the YouTube player's full screen, we could do it ourselves by essentially rotating the screen to a portrait view and then making the screen larger. And then we could also create our own controls as well. And I guess I'll show you what I'm talking about when we actually get there. So let's first build a body here. So we have a center. Let's replace this with a stack, actually, so that we can have a bunch of different components in here. And then we'll have the list of widgets. At the top, we'll have a text form field, because I want to be able to query, get any video I want. And in this, we're going to have to get a controller. So let's create that. So text editing controller, I'll just call this text controller, because we're going to also have the YouTube player controller. So I'll call this one video controller. And then let's set up init state so that we can initialize these. I think though we only need to initialize the text editing controller. So text controller like this. Alright, so text field here, we can put in our controller. Alright, and then we want on field submitted. And we'll have our string, which we'll just call s. And then in here, we're going to call a function that we'll create called, I guess, call API. To call to the YouTube API. We'll pass in our s. And actually, let's call this q because it'll be the query. And then let's grab our text controller. And just call, well, no wonder I'm getting errors. And just call clear to clear out the box. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's now build this logic here, but actually before that, let me finish with this layout. So we'll have a flexible here, and then inside of it, we'll have a list view builder. And this will build out the tiles for all of our YouTube videos. And I guess I'll just put an empty item builder in here for now. So we have our build context and then the index. We'll just have this return null, or rather, let's just make it return a container for now. And yeah, so now let's work on this call API function. So I'm going to put this up here. It'll be a future of null type. We'll take in our string query. And we're also going to need, let's see, we'll have a list of, I think it's YouTube API. So YouTube API items. We'll call this our YouTube results. And we can initialize this in here. And so this actually comes from the YouTube API library. This is the specific results. They have a bunch of metadata attached to them, and they'll have all the metadata that we need, like the video ID and the URL for the thumbnails and stuff like that. Also, while we're at it, we're going to need a YouTube API object. So YouTube API, which we'll just call YouTube API, and we want to set that up in here as well. And I'm going to put in my API key, which, as I mentioned before, is in another file here called API key. So just API key like this, I think. I don't know, let's see. Okay, so the key just goes in there. It's not a named item. So we put in our API key. We can also specify the type that we want back. We only want videos to come back, so I'm assuming we can just say type video, and it seems that we can also specify the max results. By default that's 10. Let's make it like 30. So we want 30 videos to come back from calling to the API. Alright, so inside of this function, first let's check to see that our YouTube results are empty. And actually is not empty, rather. We want to see if it has items in it, and if it does, we can clear it. And then if it doesn't, we'll go ahead and call to our YouTube API, and actually we want YouTube results equals, and then we call to the YouTube API, and there should be a search function, pass in our query, and that should give us our list of YouTube API objects. And then we can unwrap them, and what I'll do is I'll call setState in here, and I'll just have a for loop. Normally I'd use like a mapping function, but I'm feeling like using some object-oriented programming for this particular application. So we'll go with a for loop here, and then we'll build out a item which will take all this stuff, and then we can put that in another list. So actually, while we're doing this, let's go ahead and create that class. So the video item will be another widget. Let's make this stateless, and we'll pass in a YouTube API item. So we'll just call this API, and then we'll pass in a well, that'll be it. So we'll pass in these two for now. Let's of course add this to the constructor, and then the basic idea behind this will just be a container with a list view inside of it, essentially. So let's create our build function real quick. So container, and let's wrap this in a card, and then we'll wrap that in a list tile like that. And then our list tile will have, say, leading will be the thumbnail. So image.network, and we can get our thumbnail from our API by calling API thumbnail, and we want to get the high quality thumbnail, so we need to pass in the key high like that. And I think we also need to pass in the key URL so that we can get the URL. The title, let's make it just a text item. Call API title like that, and then we can have a subtitle, and we'll call API channel title like this, title, and yeah, that'll do it. So now in here we can go ahead and create another list. So list of video item type. So let's just call these video item. Of course, we want to initialize this down here. And we'll go ahead and just populate our list. And in fact, this is not what we wanted to clear. We wanted to clear this. All right. So let's see. So essentially, we just want to say video item, video item, and we pass in our API, which will be our result. And then, yeah, so pass in those two things, and then we want to just call to our video item list and add this in there. And I think that should work for us. So now, inside of init state, we can actually even call this function. Yeah, so call API, just pass in Flutter like that, so that it'll initialize on Flutter query. And then here, let's add an await like that. And then for the list view builder, we can go ahead and essentially just call to our list and then pass in the index. So video items index like this. So this should then display all of our items. And let's also put in the item count. So this will just be video item length like that. And that should do it for this particular part of this app. So let's go ahead and build it and see what it looks like. Alright, so echo says why feature null and not feature void. They do act like the same thing. They're not technically the same thing. You are returning a feature from a function that's asynchronous, even if you're not returning anything. So you can just write feature if you want, or you can write feature null or feature void. Can you explain why? Because we need to update the state. I mean, we could call it inside of the call down here instead, but I don't know, it just feels a little bit easier this way. I guess it's a little bit better to do it here, because calling set state inside of the init state function is not really advised. Let me see, this seems to not be showing anything, so let's see what we've got here. Looks like we've got some kind of error. Alright, so it says here, let me make this bigger so you guys can see. So we did in fact get some videos, it looks like. I don't know why it prints out their IDs, but that's fine. I guess it's a part of the library. It says here that we do not know the size of these items, I guess. So I guess we want to add padding then. So let's make this 8.0. Not sure if that'll fix it or not. Let's reload it. All right, so we're still getting an error. Oh yes, I know what's going on. Okay. I didn't mean to embed all this directly in the stack. The problem is they're all overlapping with one another. I want to put this inside of a container before I put it into the stack. And not a container, but actually a column. So container like this, and then a column in there. And then I'll grab all of this stuff here. And actually, we don't even need the stack, but whatever. Put it in like that. And this should resolve the problem. Let's clear the console, restart the app. There we go. Alrighty, so we got our list of YouTube videos. And it seems to be pretty decent. Of course, we can't click on them, we can't do anything with them yet. But it looks like they're coming in. And to address that minor issue before, I'm going to put this set state down here. So just set state like this. And so we'll call set state after we call to the call API. And then that should make this a little bit nicer. So let's check to see if we can query something. So I don't know. Let's put in Dart, because why not? And it looks like we do get videos about throwing darts. So, all right. So that's one piece of this for sure. Let's add some more functionality here. So I want to be able to get more items on the same from the same concept. So let's add a bottom navigation bar. And or rather a bottom app bar. And in this, we'll have a button bar. And essentially, I just want an arrow to go back and an arrow to go forward. So let's see. Let's put the children in here. We probably want to center this thing, so main axis. Yes, it's just alignment, not main axis alignment. So main axis alignment center, and then we'll make some icons. So icon button. Let's make 2 of these, and let's see. Is it child? No, it's not child. It's icon. So we need arrows, so icons, arrow, we have an arrow back here. And then for this one, I'm sure we have an arrow forward. Arrow forward, like that. And of course, these both need on pressed. For now, let's make them null. Why is that one giving me an error? Oh yeah, commas. All right, so that looks decent. Maybe we could give them some color. So let's give this one some color. Let's make it red. Apparently it's not updating. I guess because it's not. Yeah, if I give it a function, it should turn red. Because then I should be able to push it, yeah, okay. And then for this one, it'll be white, I think. Yeah, okay. So, make this one, I don't know, blue-gray or something. Alright, So we've got individual buttons, and we're going to be wanting to be able to go backwards and forwards through our data. And actually what I'm going to do, rather than create separate functions, I'm going to put the functionality inside of the call API function here. And this is kind of a bad practice. Normally you'd probably want to build your own function for this, but why not? So I'm going to put a optional parameter called next page, which will be a Boolean type. Normally what I would do is build like an enum type for this, but you know, yeah, I'm not going to go that far because we still got a lot to do here, and I'm not confident that I'll be able to cover it all in the time that I want. So what we'll do is add a bit of logic. So if the next page is equal to null, and you should probably never do this, like deliberately pass null into a function. It's pretty bad practice. So if it's null, then we're just searching for the query. If it's true, then we want to say, let's see, YouTube results equals await YouTube API, and there should be next page like that. And then if it's false, we can just say else, and we could just grab this and call previous page instead. Alright, so this is pretty disgusting code, but honestly it should suffice for what we want. So got our current videos. Alright, I need to of course connect these, so we'll call await on these two functions. So await call API, and let's pass in async like this. I'm going to pass in an empty string here, and then we're going to pass in the well, this one's back, so back will be false, and this is next page like that. And then for forward, we'll do it like this, true. Make this async, and we also need to call set state. Why is it giving me an extra parenthesis? Whatever. Alright, let's see if this works. Alright, looks like it kind of does. Yeah, looks like it's going forward. These videos all look the same though, and that's the thing. And backwards, yeah, it's changing videos, so let's go to something a little bit more varied here. So Flutter content. Yeah, it's definitely changing the videos. At least it's changing some of them. I'm not sure. Yeah, seems like it's not really our logic so much as it's the API that's not particularly doing its job properly, or the library rather. Well, at least we have the feature in here. Yeah, ACOS, you're right. Booleans can be in 3 states: null, false, and true. You should never use null like that. It's really a bad practice. If you're going to do something like that, build a enum and put that in there. Have it be like enum query for like the first call API, and then enum next page, enum previous page, something like that. Don't use a boolean and use null. It's really, really bad to do that. We could make an infinity list, but the problem with this API is that you can only fetch 50 items at a time. So we'd have to make it so that when you get down to the bottom, it then calls to the next page. I don't really want to put that much effort into it. It's something that maybe we could look at later in another video though. But yeah, and I think I've already touched on it before. I want to get the video working in here though, so let's not dwell too much on the actual list part of this application. But yeah, it's a good suggestion. If we had more time, I'd say let's go for it, but we really don't. All right, so we want to be able to tap on these items and have it open up a pop-up window. And now, so there are two ways that we could go about doing this. We could make a pop-up window that out of a dialog box, an alert dialog, and that seems like an alright idea. The problem with that, though, the problem that I have with that, is that the alert dialog doesn't really seem like it should be used for something like that. It's probably better to actually use a full route instead, like an actual page, an actual widget. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Also, we want to be able to obviously move this to our pop-up window. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to, because I'm feeling like I want to do some OOP type stuff, I'm going to write a mixin here, believe it or not. So let's and I'm thinking I'm going to write a bunch of mixins for this app. So first mixin here will be for essentially building the pop-up. So we'll call this list pop-up tap or something. So this will have a function called onTap inside of it, which when we add to our list items will we're going to need material, by the way, we'll be able to take in the API item and then open up the video player. So what we want to do is this needs to take in a type T that extends the stateful widget type, because we want to attach this to the state object rather than the actual stateful widget. We need to write it like that. So and this should be extends. So this is connected to a state object that extends a stateful widget essentially. And then we can pass in the page that we're attaching this mixin to. And then inside of it, I'm just going to put the onTap function. So this is just going to, and let's go grab the YouTube API. That's not it. And we're also going to need, I guess, services. Alright, so onTap will take in a YouTube API item. Just call it the API item like this. And then let's pass in the build context as well, like that. So now I can go back to main, import this. And I brought in services for another reason. I'll show you guys that in a moment. So I bring in our mixin, and then we can attach it to we want to attach it not to the video item. We want to attach it to our my home page essentially. So this here. So we can say with what do we call it? List pop-up tap. Oh, whoops. Did not mean to do that. And we need to pass in the my home page like that. And now let's create that missing override, which should be our onTap function. And there it is. So now we can create the logic for this function. And then we can pass it down to our list items. Hang on. Sorry, my cat just threw up on the floor. Well, that's kind of disgusting, but yeah, there's not really much I can do about it. Let's see. I'm just going to, hang on guys, let me spray this real quick, then I'll I'll come back and deal with it. This is absolutely the worst time for a cat to just like vomit on the floor. Hmm. This is disgusting. Alright, well, whatever. Second. Alright, yeah, I got the spray on it. It should be alright. Should not reek here in a moment. Alright, so. Oh, and great. Now people are texting me. Alright, whatever. Alright, so we've got our onTap function. And we want to create the logic for it, and then we want to pass it down. So onTap is just going to take in the API in the context. We can call set state. This is one of the main advantages of creating the mixin like this. By calling set state up here, even though we're calling it inside of a stateless widget, it'll still rebuild properly. So we can say we want to get the video ID. So let's create a, I'm going to create a global variable up here called video ID. So video ID like that, and then down here what we'll do is just set that video ID. So video ID equals API item dots, and there should be a video ID in here. I guess it's just ID. All right, and then we'll call navigator of context push, and we want to push in a route that we're going to create. So for now, let's just comment this out because we don't actually have a route built yet. And the route will then take in the video ID. But while we're doing this, we also need to then pass this this onTap function into here. So we can pass it in via the class. So list popup tap, whatever. We can just call this the I guess list popup tap like that, and then we can add it to our constructor. And then down here in our list tile, we can have a call to our onTap function like this. And then we can just call list popup tap dot onTap like this. And then we just need to pass in our API item, which is just our API, and then the context. And that will call the function up here, which will then work properly. So then let's, where we're passing this in, there should be an error right now, or there's not an error, but we do need to specify here what this item is. So was it list popup item? Just by saying this. So we're essentially just passing in this object so that it will work. And that should do it for us. Now when we click it, it should work. And what I'm going to do here, just to test it, is just print out the video ID. And let's see if that works. So if I click on one of these, I get an error. So let's see. OnTap was called on null because this is not set up properly. Okay. Let me reset this. That should fix it because they weren't being passed through. Alright, so it actually did print it out. I don't know why it didn't. It should have loaded the list in the beginning. Let's see. Alright, so we need to fix that. Apparently the onInit is not actually loading the list properly. Likely because we just passed in this object. So we need to remedy that fact. Let me see. I mean, this seems alright, the way that we've implemented it. And you know what it could be? It could be that it's not building before, so it's not building the object before the call to the API is happening. Excuse me. So what we can actually do to fix this is wrap the call in init state inside of another function, which is a little bit of a pain, but whatever. So future, let's just call init API like this. And the main reason why we want to do this is so that we can call await call API on Flutter, and make sure to spell Flutter properly. And then now, because you can't make this asynchronous, so instead you can call it from inside of the init state like this through another function. So now it should properly wait. And let's see. Will it fix it? Nah. You know what also might help is going back and calling set state here. As much as I really don't want to do this. Alright. So let's reset it. Yep, and that works. Alright, so we don't want to call set state too many times, and I can go ahead and let's remove this. Just put this in here instead, and then we'll remove these calls to set state, and this one as well. So I guess we're going to have to do it inside of the function, which I don't particularly like doing, but you know what, it's not a huge deal. Usually what I would do in this case is probably refactor everything into a smaller, or another widget rather, and then add the pop-up tab. That way when we call to init state, it's already been built. So yeah, that would resolve the problem. The other way we could do it is just to pass the onTap function in rather than the object, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Alright, are there any questions thus far? We've got some deleted messages from Igu. I'm not even going to try and say your name, sorry. I'll just call you Igil. Igili, maybe that's it. Igili form. And Aiko says call set state after the for loop. Yeah, we could call it after the for loop, or we could just wrap the for loop in it. It's basically the same thing. I guess wrapping the for loop in it. Yeah, no, it's the same thing, because basically when you're wrapping it in the for loop, it's not being called for every iteration. It's only being called when the for loop completes. So it's basically the same as what I'm doing right here. So, and I can even show you if we just restart this, wait, it'll pop up like that. And then click on one of these, it should give us our printout here. So you can see here at the bottom, rather than printing out video ID first, it prints out the ID itself. All right, so that's good enough for now. Let's go into creating our pop-up window. And along with the pop-up window, we want to create another mixin. So the main reason why I wanted to create mixins was to make it so that we could force the app to be in portrait mode or in landscape mode. So this will be similar to this in that it extends a stateful widget. This will, when we implement it on a stateful widget, it will try to force that stateful widget to be in portrait mode. And then when we dispose that stateful widget, it'll go back to normal. So it'll allow us to sort of temporarily change these settings. And we can also do the same by creating a landscape mode version, like this, for when we actually create the full screen window for the actual video. So to set these up, we need to create some helper functions here. So let's create the first one. Just call this landscape mode only, and we just want to call system chrome set preferred orientation, and then we can put in the orientations here. So device orientation for landscape, it's right and left. And then let's copy this for the and landscape. Then this one, let's call this portrait. And for this one, we want up and down. And then we just want a function that will enable the rotation. So we can just call this enable rotation, and we'll just put all of these options in here. So now what we can do is override build and dispose for both of these. So build, and it's actually important that we don't call super build. We want to pass back null, but before we build it, we'll put in our portrait mode only for this one, and then for dispose, we'll put in, we can call super dispose and dispose. We'll put in enable rotation, like that. And then for the other one, we just want to change the build part to enable the landscape mode, like that. All right, so that looks good to me, and we can actually use one of these. So if I want to, I can force this stateful widget to be in portrait mode. So just put my home page in there, and now that's automatically in there. So every time the build function is called for this widget, it calls to the mixins build function, which then calls the portrait mode only function for us. And then when this widget goes out of view, it gets disposed, which gives us back our rotation. So it's a fairly simple idea. Honestly, I think it's very underused. And what I mean by very underused are mixins. Mixins can be really powerful. And yeah, so you can see why they're pretty useful. Up for life, I'm sorry for constantly asking for Haskell, but do you have plans of doing stuff with Haskell? Yeah, I do have plans of doing stuff with Haskell eventually. And yeah, John, I feel a little bit icky about null as well. In this case, it's not a big deal. But yes, I would rather not have null in my language. Luckily, Dart is bringing in null safety. I'm not sure how far they are on implementing that, but last I checked, it was almost fully implemented. All right, so now let's create our pop-up window. So create another file here. So popup.dart. We're going to want material. We're going to need the YouTube player. Let's bring in the mixins. Jesus. Seems my analyzer is slowing down. Hopefully it's not too bad. Mixins, and then yeah, that should be fine for now. And then we can create a class here, which we'll call the Popup video player route. I'll extend this with model routes like that. And then what we can do with this is make it so that we can override all this stuff and basically create our own route, basically. So we're creating our own route and our own what is essentially our own pop-up window. So we can choose a barrier color here. Let's make this something nice. And actually, before we do that, let's add some variables here. So we want a child widget, and this might give us an error. Okay, now it's just giving us an error because it needs to be initialized. And then we want doubles for top, left, right, and down. These will be the margin doubles, so we can control how big our pop-up window is. And so let's create that constructor. And yeah, let's make this all named constructors. So this dot top, this dot left, this dot right, this dot up, and no, this should be up, not top. We'll make this down. All right, and also while we're at it, we can add some logic to initialize these by default. So we can just say if top equals, and I don't know why I keep writing top. If up equals null, then we'll just say up equals 20. So we'll have 20 pixels by default. And we'll do this for all of these so that, and these should actually be 20.0, 0.0, because they're doubles. Not that it really matters. Dart should automatically add the 0.0, but it's usually a good practice to make sure to write your doubles properly. All right, so now this will automatically initialize these for us, and it'll build our nice window. Then let's create the barrier color. So this will be the border color, whatever's on the outside of the window. We can make it like transparent if we wanted to, but I'm not going to go into that because it gets kind of complicated if you really want to make like a translucent window. So let's make this like blue-gray, and we'll have like a with opacity here, so it'll be slightly translucent, but it won't show the background processes, so it won't show our list. And actually, speaking of list, I still have the emulator open, don't I? So let me close that because it's not going to matter right now. Now we have this barrier dismissible. This you can see here it actually says we can dismiss the route by tapping the barrier. I don't want that. I want to actually create a button to dismiss this, so we'll put that as false. Then we have the barrier label. This is just a semantic label, so we can just say video pop-up. Build page we'll come back to. Maintain state. You want to set this if you want to maintain the state behind this window. I think for now we'll have it be false. Like that. Then of course we have opaque. It's pretty self-explanatory. You know what? I'm going to make this false, so I guess we could have it be somewhat transparent. And then transit duration. This is the duration that it takes for the page to pop up. And of course, we can add an animation. So we can have a duration here, and I'm just going to put in like 400 milliseconds so that we can see that animation. And to actually get the animation, we will want to override another function here called build transitions. We could create the animation in here, but it's actually better practice to do it in here. So you can see that the build transitions here has build context, animation, and a secondary animation, and then it also has the child of this particular route. So, and don't worry about this child here. It's not going to override our child from up here, luckily, even if we don't rename it. So we'll have a fade transition, and for this, the opacity will be based on our primary animation, and then we'll have a scale transition. And for this, we'll make the scale based on our primary animation. Forgot my colon there. And then inside of this, we'll just have the child, like that. And why are we getting an error? Let's see. Expected to find a comma, that's why. Alright. So that'll give us a nice animation when the window opens. And I believe the secondary animation is for when the, let's see. I'm not sure what the secondary animation does. We could look into it, I guess. Let me look real quick. So, okay. So the animation for the route being pushed on top of this route. So if another route gets pushed on top of this route, then we want to call to the secondary animation. Since that's not going to happen, we don't really care about it. So then in the build page, let's define the basic structure of this widget. So we're just going to have a material. And then inside of the material, well, first we'll have this material be a type of material type. Let's make it transparency. And then we'll have a safe area. Now a safe area, if you guys have never encountered this widget before, it's a widget that allows you to avoid, basically say, all right, I don't want the bottom to be overlapping, I don't want the top to be overlapping. So you can basically choose to scale the window around like bezels and other pieces of the UI with a safe area. So for this, by default, top, bottom, left, and right will all be true. So I'll just leave that alone. We'll just have our child in here, which would be a container. And then in the container, we can have our margin, which will be an edge inset. Let's make it only. Put in our top, which will be the up. Bottom, which will be the bottom. Left will be the left, and then right will be the right. And maybe top, maybe the up should have been, yeah, and I didn't change these, by the way. Maybe up should be top instead of up. And bottom should be down, so let's do that. So I can select them all like this, replace them all, do the same for ups. Place this at top. There we go. That looks a bit better. Alright, so then inside of the container, we just want to have our child in here, which is the child that we're passing into this route. So this child up here. So then This is funny. My cat threw up on the floor and then he came in and started snoring. I don't know if you guys hear it, but it's really annoying. Alright, so we want to embed a stateful widget inside of this. So we'll create that. I guess we'll just call this is called what? Popup video route. So we'll just call our stateful widget pop-up video player. And actually, I could use the it's not working. I can use the thing to create a stateful widget. So if you type in STF, or was it STF? Yes, STF will create a stateful widget like this, and then you can just fill it out. So just call this pop-up video player like that. And then you can see I have a lot of different things. And then if you want a stateless, I think it's STL is stateless, and then STF is stateful. It's pretty useful to know that, especially if you're working with VS Code. Well, of course, if you're working with VS Code. Anyway, so we want to then just we're going to embed this stateful widget inside of the route when we call to it inside of our main function or our main object. So in here is where we want to have the video player, and so we need to pass in the video ID. So this is just a string, and I'll pass it into the widget part instead of the state part as a final item. That way we can access it inside of our stateful widget. And here we also want to add the portrait mode. I don't know if we brought in mixins, but we should have. Portrait mode with the pop-up video player inside of it. Maybe I didn't spell it properly. Yeah, I didn't spell the mixin properly. Portrait. There we go. So we want this to stay in portrait mode. We could make this also full screen so that when we click on it, rather than going to another route, we just make this full screen. But you know what? I want to make two separate video players. That way I can show you guys how to do this properly. So in here, let's put in a scaffold, and then we'll have a body, a center. Then we'll have a child. This time we'll have our stack in here so that we can align things around. And the fit for the stack, let's make this stack fit.loose. So they fit around loosely. And then we'll have our children. And in here we're going to have our video player, which we'll put in the middle of the stack. And then we'll have a button to close this pop-up window. And then we'll also have buttons to play the video, a button to pause the video, and then a button to open up our full screen. Josh, no, there is no result type inside of Dart. I'm trying to say your name, but it's really hard. A ronde. Thank you. Yes, I noticed that just now. Luckily I caught it, but you would have. Yeah, thanks for telling me. Yeah, you're right. Null is just another identifier. Vape time. Yes, I'm vaping just a normal custard flavor. Okay. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to just start throwing them in the chat. I'll come back to them in a moment. Let's build this out though. So have a container. We want to specify the alignment because this is how the stack works. Stack is just literally a stack of items, and we want to align them around the stack so that they don't overlap with one another unless we actually want that to happen. So first, let's start with alignment. Let's make this bottom center. So this will be our button bar. And you know what? I can actually grab the button bar from in here and reuse it. So let's just grab this. Oops. It's down to there. Move this part and this part because we don't need it, and these don't need to be asynchronous, I don't think. So our button bar, we're going to have 3 buttons in here instead of 2. Let's grab one of these and make a third. And we can get rid of the colors if we want to. I guess we could have kept this one red because this will be our play button. So let's see. Play arrow. There we go. Or was what was that circle one? Play circle filled or circle outline, I liked better. That one. Alright. So we'll put in the logic here in a moment because we're going to need to get a controller from our video player. But since we don't have the video player in here, we don't have that controller. So for this icons, we'll have our pause button, and then for this one, we'll have our full screen. And actually, while we're at it, let's go ahead and import the Popup file and see if it works. It should work. I think it should work, but yeah, we can add it in here really quickly. So navigator of context, we're going to push in our new route, which is the route named, what did we call it? Video player route, I think. So we just want to put that in. No, it was Popup video player route. Like that. Normally you'd put like a material route in here, and then the child here will be our Popup video player. And the Popup video player needs the video ID, which is just our video ID. Remember, we set it up here, so. Alright, yeah, it seems like the analyzer is slowing down. This is a known issue with this. Let's see. Yeah, this is a current known issue that they're working on fixing. I guess I didn't. Oh, pop top? Yeah. No wonder it's causing an error. Pop up. There we go. Alright, so if we open up the emulator here, now we should be able to click on one of these and have our pop-up come up. And you can see it's actually transparent, so we can see the list behind. We'll have the video player in the middle here. We have our play button, our pause button, our full screen button, and then we'll also have a close button that will be right on the video player itself. And with the normal setup, you could actually close this thing by just clicking on the outside. I've put that to false, but we may want to add true in this case, just to make it easier for a user to navigate. So actually, let's do that real quick. So barrier dismissible, just make this true, and now I should be able to click the outside. Well, I probably need to restart it, but yeah, I should be able to click the outside and just dismiss the barrier. So Click on this video. And apparently it's still not working, but whatever. You know what? That's fine. You can just hit back and it works like that. All right, so we've got our buttons here. Let's now set up the video player. So while we're doing that, we want to set up the controller first. So the controller, I'm not quite sure how the controller works, but we'll find out here in a moment. So it's called YouTube video, or is it player controller? Yeah, so video controller is what we'll call it. Didn't we also have one in here that we didn't use at all? Huh. I guess we don't really need it in here. Alright, yeah. No, we don't really need it in there. We'll need it in here though. So video controller. And then in our stack, let's go below our button bar. And yeah, the button bar is right here. And actually we need to go below the container even. And yeah, we'll create another container here. This will have alignment. Let's just make it alignment center. So it'll be in the very center of the screen. And then our child here will be our YouTube player. Put in the context. Then the video ID, which remember is inside of our widget, so widget video ID. Let's make autoplay false so it doesn't automatically start to play. And then we're going to hide the controls because we want to be able to control it ourselves. So make that true. And then to get the controller, I think we need to call this onPlayerInitiated function. So this takes in a YouTube, what is it? YouTube player controller. And what we'll do is just say video controller equals controller like that. All right, so then let's see. Yeah, so that should be all right. Let's see what this looks like. All right, so now we have the video in there. Obviously we can't play it because we disabled the controls, but let me re-enable them so that we can see if it works. And yes, so it's actually playing the video. Got this big bearded dude talking, and I've got sound and everything, so
also tomorrow,
you can hear the sound if you want.
TLD doesn't exist yet. Google, if you want to sponsor some more.
The feed was getting skippy, you said? Looks like I'm still
So, I'm Abraham.
uploading at a fairly consistent speed. I'll have to check. Yeah, it looks like it's still 8 kilobytes per second, or 8,000 kilobytes per second. I don't know. Maybe there's something else going on. All right, so that works. Let's go ahead and hide the controls again. And now that we have the controller, we can set up these buttons. So for play, let's put a comma here. So for the play button, we just go video controller, check to see if it's null first. Then we want to say there should just be a play function. And for pause, just video controller, probably pause. And then for the full screen, this is an entirely different thing. We want to pop another route. So now if I hit play, this starts the video. and then if I hit pause, it stops the video. So that works pretty well. All right. Let's create our close button. So I just want to make this close button, let's make it a padding. Why am I not getting auto completion? Whatever. So padding. And I want to push this button so that it's on top of the video player. So we can use edge insets for this. I think this needs to be capital, and it doesn't need to be constant like that. Let's see. Put in like 50 pixels and see if that's good enough. And then inside of here, we'll put in our container. And then inside of this, excuse me, we'll have our icon button. Put in icons close, which will be an X, I think. Yeah, this is absurd. The analyzer is just shitting the bed. Hang on, let me reload the window. That should fix it. But I wonder if it's going to kill the emulator. Well, it probably did. Even though we still see the application, it did disconnect it. Now let's just give it a sec to reload, and I'll talk to you guys while I'm doing that. Ahmed, you don't really understand any of this, but it's really interesting to watch. Flutter's very easy to get into, I gotta say, so you should be able to grasp it pretty quickly. I've been able to teach people, and within a few hours they're able to build very basic apps, and then within a few weeks they can easily build apps this complicated, if not more complicated. So it is a very, very easy framework to learn, and the Dart language definitely helps you in that regard because it's very simple. I mean, aside from things like isolates and zones, which you really don't have to worry about for Flutter so much. I think that's part of the reason why it's becoming more popular. And there have been a lot of these really cool polls and things done on Flutter, and people tend to really like it. And I've also seen a lot of job openings and stuff for Flutter developers recently. I actually got my own job recently with a contractor to do some Flutter work. So I actually got 2 contractors that have asked me to do some work with them. And I'm still finalizing that, but I should be working on at least one of those projects. Anyway, all right, so when we push the button here, we just want to call navigator of, pass in the build context, and then we just want to pop the window off the stack. So that's all this is doing here. So remember, the window itself is being popped on or pushed onto the stack, which is just our router. And then to get rid of it, we just pop it off. And I don't need to pass the context in the pop. All right, so let me rerun the emulator, get this rerunning. Extension methods are coming. In fact, while we're waiting here, there is a roadmap that you can take a look at. Or there's an entire GitHub repository. I'll show you this real quick. So if you go to this GitHub repository, the Dartlang language repository. You can see here what they're working on. So the accepted specifications. So for the future releases, we've got asynchronous star behavior, constant updates, contravariant super interfaces, generalized type defs. These I'm really excited about, being able to specify types with type def. It's pretty cool. Language versioning, triple shift operator, that's not really that impressive, but let's see. In 2.3 they put in the spread operator, they put in all those control flow collections and unified collections, which are pretty good. Then we've got stuff they're working on. So working, they've got set literals, static extension methods, which you were just talking about, implicit constructors, static immutability. So yeah, you can really kind of take a look at these and see what people are suggesting and what they're working on, which is pretty cool. Some of these have been, well, some of these have been abandoned, but if you really want to see what people are asking for, you can also look at these too. The issues themselves. You've got people talking about what they want. So some people are asking for crazy things like dependent types and higher kinded types and stuff like that. This guy wants sealed classes, you know, and these are being added in. I think they're actually going to do algebraic data types eventually. So there's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon for Dart. All right, so let's switch back over. We got our application open here. Let's see. So let's open this up. We've got our X here. It's actually at the top. Let me, it's because we don't have the alignment. We want the alignment to be in the center, I think. That'll put it there. Let's put it center left. Or right, rather. Sorry, dyslexia for the win. And then we want to push it up further. So I think probably another 50 pixels, so 100. And a little bit higher, 120 maybe? Yeah, that looks about right. So click that, it closes the window. And actually, still a little off to me. 140 seems about right. Maybe 135 would be better. Let's just do 130. All right. So there we go. We've got like this nice X button in the middle of the window, and we can close it. All right. So that does it for this piece of the application. Now let's create our full screen player. So I'll make a file here called full screen, and then we can build the actual full screen player. Now, I know that this library gives us the ability to open things in full screen, but as you guys saw, it was a bit buggy. So what we essentially want to do is recreate it with the smaller screen player. So essentially we just want to create a stateful widget that will allow us to basically build a decently sized window and have it you know, display well so that people can actually watch these videos. So let's bring in material. We're going to need our mixins. And let's also bring in the player. And then for this, I'll use the little thing to make our stateful widget. Video player full screen. That's what we'll call it. Let me reset that because I put a capital L there. Video player full screen. Place that. There we go. Close that. And yeah, essentially in this thing, we want to pass in the video ID again so that we can specifically target the video ID and then play the video. And we may want to also add a duration so that when the user opens the full screen window, it starts the video where it left off. But I'm not sure if that works. So let's just do it real quick. Let's just add it and see if it works. So position is what I'll call it, and then we can just add it here. So then with this one, we're going to add the landscape mode mix-in. So landscape mode, video, player full screen like that. Now, I'm sure you guys are wondering why I'm using so many stateful widgets, even though I'm not calling like set state or anything in here. That's mainly because I'm implementing these mix-ins. I could make these work for stateless widgets, but the thing is, they don't have a dispose method, so I can't re-enable the rotation. Though I guess in this case it really wouldn't matter. So for landscape mode, let's make this a stateless widget instead of a stateful. So let's just have it on stateless widget like that, and then we can just remove the dispose. Because when we go backwards, this should then work. So we can just reconvert this back to a stateful widget. So let me just, or stateless widget rather. Alright, so that should be fine. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if it breaks it or not. So let's see. Oh yes, of course, we need to add the actual mix-in again. So landscape mode, like that. And in this, we could also, I actually completely forgot to call super build, pass in the context. So this, I need to call in all of our widgets that have the mix-in. So let me do that real quick with the pop-in. I think the pop-in has a mix-in, yeah. So call super build context, and then inside of main we have it too. So we put it right here. Alright, so that way it actually calls to our build context. Alright, or calls to our build function. Okay, so we're going to return let's return a stack again. Though actually it really doesn't matter, we only have the one item in the stack. I guess we could, no, you know what, we're going to return a stack because we're going to have another close button again. So we'll have the YouTube player, and then we'll have a button that will allow us to go backwards. So start with a container which will have our video player in it. And let's center this thing. Get the YouTube player. Pass in our context. If I can spell. Pass in our video ID. We'll make this, let's make this autoplay so that when a user opens up the window, it just automatically starts playing. We're going to leave the controllers here, so, or the controls rather, so the user can move around the bar and pause it and things, because we don't want to implement those on top of our quote-unquote full screen player. Though in the future, like if I was actually going to build this and then ship it, I probably would disable the player controls, because when they're in the quote-unquote full screen mode, they're not actually in full screen, so they could just hit that button and then it would cause an error. Anyway, so to disable that, I would just disable the plugins, and then I'd have my own like pop-up bar that would disappear when the user's not hovering over it with their finger. Alright, anyway, we don't have time to do that right now, unfortunately, so I'm not going to get into that. Let's put in show progress indicator so we can see how far the video's gone. And I guess we could set up a controller, but we don't really need one. All we really need to do here is then just create the close button. So in this case, because this is taking up the entire screen, we can just use the alignment rather than using like a margin to center this button. So alignment will just be left or top left like that. And then we'll have a child here, which will be our icon button. And for this, I'm going to just grab the text that we had in the pop-up. Where is it? Down here. And I'll just put this in here. And it just occurred to me that I didn't implement the full screen button yet. But that's fine. So this is all the same. We're still just popping everything out. And we could actually make this icon bigger. So 40 pixels. And let's give it a color. Alright, so that's actually it for this, but let's now hook up the logic to make this actually open up to full screen when we want it to. So with this, it's just a matter of moving down the route again. So we're going to call a material route. And then the material route will build out our video player full screen object. So we just want to call navigator. You don't have to call, so I'm doing this navigator of context thing every time. You don't actually have to do that. You can just do navigator and then just do push and then pass in the context like that. But yeah, you can either do of, or you can just do push or pop or whatever you're going to do and then pass in the context. So let's just do it that way this time. We want the material page route, and the material page route just implements the builder, which has the context in it. And for this, we're just going to video player full screen like that. We don't have the position yet, so we want to put in our video ID. So that's just I think widget video ID, and then the position, it's going to be from our controller. So video controller, I guess it's value, position, there we go. And that gives us a duration. And we could then apply that to our video player. So let's give this a shot now. Looks like the emulator's still open. Alright, so let me open one of these. Start playing it in this window. It should be alright. Do you guys actually hear that or not?
Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to be implementing the
dude talking
implementation of our list view widget. So this list.
Here, let me turn off that sound. Alright, you guys are saying yes, so you do hear it. Hang on, let me recenter the chat because it's being annoying. And there we go. Now you guys' stuff is popping up. So yeah, this is working. Now, we open the full screen. Looks like we've got a big old error going on. And it killed the app. So let's find out what actually happened here. So oh wow, this is pretty long. Let me make this bigger. I think I know exactly what happened here. So let me check to see what we've got. So it looks like it's loading the page. Insertion was sorted by building the icon button, material color, primary value of color, blah blah blah. No material widget was found. That's why. So we need to add a scaffold around the full screen. So we could just add a piece of material, but I'm going to add a... Actually, you know what? Let's just do that. like this. The main reason is because without the material, we don't have access to the navigator. We don't have a lot of other pieces, and that could potentially cause a lot of errors. And that's what we just saw, was that huge error. Red screen of death, yeah, sort of. It's not, usually it doesn't kill the emulator like that or kill the app, but this time it did, because apparently it couldn't handle it on the Java side either. So it looks like it's building, and once it gets there, it should work in theory. Oh wow, apparently there are 25 concurrent viewers. That's a lot more than I expected there to be right now. Oh, now, as soon as I said something, it goes down to 23. So I guess there are a lot of people who watch these videos without saying much. And that's fine. You guys don't have to interact in the chat. Anyway. Yep, that is true, Jeffet. I think you said something in the beginning and then you haven't said much. It's funny how Android just throws out the activity and rebuild everything on configuration change. Yeah, it is kind of funny. Watch most of your Flutter series, really loved it. Working on my own project now and do some of the freelance app development. All right on, man. Good for you. You're living the dream, as they say. I'm glad I was able to get you to a place where you can actually use your skills to make some money and do something that you enjoy doing, hopefully. I don't know if you enjoy Flutter or not, but most people do seem to enjoy it. All right, so that actually worked. Let's spin our screen the proper way. We've got our X. It should play. I don't know. Let's see. Let me click it one more time. Let's see if we've got any errors here. No errors. I think the issue is not on my end. I think it's on the end of the plugin, unfortunately. Something tells me that the Android plugin that this guy built is probably more stable, because it looks like this one, from what I can see, it uses a web view, and that's how it's able to work on iOS as well. And as a result, you've got some errors that could potentially happen with JavaScript and a few other things. So, all right, so let's go with this video now. And with the other one, I think when I looked at it, all right, so we've got the video playing. When I looked at it, it also had the ability to change the actual quality of the video inside of it, whereas this one you don't. You just kind of play the video from the stream. Anyway, it seems to be working. We've got this sound working as well. I'll put it on for a moment so you guys can hear it. We can also move it forward.
Just more third-party libraries available to you compared to the ones you have available with Flutter. Now the one that is missing from
Okay, anyway, so I'm not going to advertise this guy's YouTube video, but yeah, so there we go. We've got this thing working. Oh God. All right. Let's see if we can make it so that the positioning works. So like when we play a video in this screen and then like pause it and want to go to the full screen, we can then get where that video was and then resume it in the full screen version. So let's see. So I guess what we want to do here, we could add a play button. No, you know what we could do is on init player initialize, pass in the YouTube controller. Let's just call this controller. And then what we can do is take our, let's create a new controller here. So call this, I don't know, underscore controller. All right. So we say underscore controller equals controller. We're going to use the cascade operator to then queue this to where we want it to be. And it actually queue looks like it takes in an integer. I guess we could put in the position in seconds. And yeah, this requires start at named constructor, and maybe that'll work. I don't know really. I'm kind of dubious on that. So let's play this. Get a few seconds going. Let me turn off the sound so it doesn't annoy you guys. And now, when we open this, in theory, yeah, okay, so it actually starts where it left off, and yeah, so that works. I guess this needs to be in the constructor. That's fine. I don't really, doesn't really bother me. And let's just, I guess we'll just call this video controller then. Alright, so that works, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised that it actually worked properly. Looks like we still got some kind of error here, and that's because it's final. Alright, so I guess we don't want it to be final. It's still gonna bitch and moan about it because this is constant. So should be alright like this, even though it's gonna complain because this is supposed to be immutable, and this is obviously not immutable. In fact, I could probably just remove this here completely and just call controller Q start at position, and that should do what we want it to. So let me open up another Flutter tutorial. I'm kind of upset that I haven't seen any of my own Flutter tutorials in here. And look at all these like crazy thumbnails that these people make. God, YouTube is such a clickbait heaven. Let's just tensor programming. I'm not really one to talk. My recent thumbnail on this particular stream is pretty clickbaity. We got an error. Some kind of exception happened. Let's see what that was. That looks like a big old exception. Okay, so it's just, it couldn't load some random JPEG that I guess is coming in through the web view. Alright, so play this thing. It should be playing, but apparently not. Let's open it in full screen. And we get some issues with the okay. So I guess our queue plan is not working because this is somehow null, even though it shouldn't be, because it's coming from on player initialize. This should be the controller of this video. It should be being created by the video player. Yeah, all right. So I guess we got to throw this out. Let's just remove this entirely. I think the app will automatically do it for us because it was working before. And if it has that error that we were seeing, then alright, so this guy's talking. Now when I open it in the full screen, it should... No, it did restart, alright. So the other way of doing it did actually work. I'm not sure why, though.
What TensorCore really does is form to make.
You know what I can do, though, is actually make a controller in here, so...
Are the basis of the really heavy workloads. TensorCore kicks in, 6-bit floating point.
And then we can just say video controller equals controller. Let's just copy this. Or, you know what, let's just use the cascade operator like that. And that killed our app. There's an issue with the Java API on the side of the plugin. So maybe this is just not meant to be. Here's a title suggestion for you. Better than React Native? You won't believe what I live coded. Oh, God. Makes me sound like such a shill. How to keep it playing by blocking the screen? Sorry, I'm not really sure what you mean. How would you implement a bar or a button that appears and fades away on touch? There are various ways that you could do this. You would have a gesture detector, probably. So, gesture detector, check to see if the user is like tapping the screen or tapping the gesture detector area. And if they are, then you have the button appear, and you can do it similar to how we did with our pop-up window. I mean, obviously you don't have to go all the way and create a model root and have that root pop up. Instead, you have a dialog box appear. So, and you can do this by calling, I think it's just show dialog, something like that. And show dialog, well, I can't do it in a state list widget, but a stateful widget should have it. Show dialog will pop up a dialog screen. You should be able to control how long it stays open so that it will automatically close. And then, yeah, so you could have it stay open for like a second or so and then close it after the user is done with it. All right, so this is just not going to work, and I'm not going to worry about it, frankly. It's not a big deal. It's a shame. I'm not sure why it worked before and now it's not working, but there's nothing we can do about it. If it's a part of the library, it's not something that I can fix. I guess that sort of teaches me not to use the iOS version of some third-party library that I've never looked at before. Short to Ground says, I've got an app rejected for putting a YouTube video in a web view. You have to use API. What was it, rejected from the Play Store? I've never heard of that happening. We are using the API in this plugin. The plugin does use the API in the back end. So there's no issue here. I don't see why Google would say, oh, you can't deploy this app. You could deploy this app as it is, though I wouldn't because there are too many bugs with it. Alrighty, guys. Well, I guess we're done. We've got our app built. It does exactly what I expected it to do, and well, there are a few features that I would have liked to implement, but it seems to be all right. Obviously, if you were to build this on a device, it would run a lot faster But you know what? It's actually pretty smooth considering that it was that it's all web views and it's pinging the API and all that stuff. Even like the full screen, like it's running at least 30 frames per second, which is pretty decent. So, and you know, obviously there's some stuttering here and there, which is fine. There are some rough edges with this app, but you know what, it's just a demo app, so I don't really care about that. It's not for production. If you guys want to take it and use it as like a template for something you want to build, go right ahead, by all means. But I'm not responsible for that, for what happens if you run into all kinds of crazy bugs. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming out. Thanks for checking out this live stream. It's a lot of fun to talk to you guys and to code this application. I'm going to commit it over to GitHub. If you guys want to, you know, if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in the content, of course, there'll be a lot more Flutter content coming out. And yeah, I also do Rust, I do Elixir. I'm going to start doing some closures, some Haskell, some OCaml, some F#, some Scala at some point. And yeah, got a lot of stuff going on. And hopefully things are starting to pick up. I actually just announced that I'm probably going to start doing like 3 to 4 videos a week. Now I don't have any merchandise or anything like that. But you can click that little notification bell if you want to. I'm just kidding. No, actually, you should probably do that because the way the YouTube works, even if you're a subscriber, you're not guaranteed to get my content. That's kind of infuriating. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good night, all right? And, or morning, or, you know, I know some of you it's fairly early, so, yeah. You guys all have a good day, night, evening, whatever. And I'll see you in the next video, the next live stream.